The flip phone comeback might not have been perfect, but how we got here is pretty fascinating.
A phone.
Hi.
Hello.
I've seen companies pour countless resources with engineers and marketers working for months or even years in the pursuit of perfecting an idea, a solution to a need consumers have, or sometimes one they still won't understand until they hold it. Most of these products won't make a dent either because their timing wasn't right, or even because the technology was ahead of its time. But then there are the lucky few that do succeed, those that are so good that we choose to use them as daily drivers regardless of the sea of options we can choose from. The Moto RAZR 2024 is one of them. Now that its successor is official, I thought it would be a good idea to revisit one of my favorite flagship killers of 2024 and tell you how it aged. I'm Jaime Rivera, and welcome to another episode of How It Started, How It's Going, powered by MediaTek. The story of the RAZR in the past is completely opposed to how it played out in round 2, or actually round 3. That irresistible juggernaut from 2004 that took the world by storm. It remains the best-selling clamshell phone of all time at 130 million units, and its popularity was such that it remained the best-selling phone in the United States for 3 years, up until Apple launched the iPhone 3G in 2008. Its claim to fame was really based on fashion and great marketing because, other than its slim profile, it wasn't really an innovation in anything else. By contrast, this new batch of RAZRs we have today are a completely different animal. The first modern flip phone with a foldable display, and also the first company to get the design right with the bell-shaped crease that everyone uses now. The problem is that, well,
We attempted to fold it 100,000 times. Doing all right? But that's not quite what happened.
Yeah, 2020 was a complicated year for a launch for more than one reason, but at that point, the biggest problem was that we had already spent like 4 years seeing phones as tools, where water resistance and durability were to be expected in an expensive package. It was hard to convince anyone to spend more than $1,000 for a phone that would not last, and the ripples of those initial reviews are still felt today. So, where does a company go from there? Some left the market completely, and those that persisted most likely did so at a loss for a bit until they raised prices. But then there's the case of Motorola, which is pretty interesting. The company didn't just fix the problem, but also managed to pull it off by doing exactly what this form factor needed: a drop in the price tag. If you notice, the base models of most companies now fall into what we know as the premium category, which we nerds call flagship killers. More or less $700 for 2 cameras and enough specifications to make you feel like you're not missing out. I've always felt this is where Motorola's flip foldable should compete because their specifications were nowhere near the flagship offerings that came from Samsung. We saw a bit of that with the 2023 base RAZR, but the 2024 model is where things got serious. This base RAZR was so good that it became my flip foldable of choice for most of the year, even over the Z Flip 6, and yes, even over the RAZR Plus. It's actually the RAZR I've used most for the past 20 years, so for anyone wondering if it's now strong enough to survive regular to heavy use, let's just say it did more than that. This phone has lived without a case for an entire year, in part because I feel it's built as every phone should. I've never been a fan of glass on glass. I feel it's just another surface that's ready to break. This vegan leather finish spent a sweaty summer in my pocket, and it still looks and feels like new. And listen, yes, I know it's not real leather, to which I say, who cares, honestly? All I want is for it to age well, and that's exactly what this phone did. Its compact footprint and slim body meant it was never uncomfortable to hold nor use, which means I never really dropped it. And then another thing that contributed is that I spent really little time on the inner display. I seriously thought there was no way a company could pull off a useful experience on this cover display, but listen, I was wrong. It's pretty cool and already has me excited for trying out the functionality with the new Clicks keyboard case coming very soon. Now, as for the inner display, I will tell you that this new screen protector aged well. I mean, it's still in place, no lint issues in the borders, and little to no issues with using polarized sunglasses. A lot of it had to do with just just how bright this panel gets and how well it adapts to harsh scenarios. Motorola's panel proved to be beyond the quality that you should expect for a phone at this price point. And the same goes for how well tuned these speakers were for content consumption. To win hard. Listen, Samsung's Dynamic AMOLED 2X. Actually, the overall experience of just using this phone on the day-to-day can only be summarized as pleasant. A 4200 mAh battery doesn't really break any records, and yet this phone would last all day every single time, regardless of how I used it. The user interface felt snappy throughout all my use cases. And listen, this phone has Motorola's signature call quality. If you're already too young to know what making a call from a landline felt like years ago, seriously, try any Motorola. Even while I tested it in the dense complexities of New York City and Los Angeles, this phone didn't really disappoint in holding on to data or phone calls. All this heavy lifting was made possible by today's sponsor, MediaTek. I was really happy when I saw that Motorola chose the Dimensity 7300X to power this phone. MediaTek has already garnered a strong reputation for its ability to balance power and media experiences, endurance, and snappy performance at any price point. This is just one of many smartphones Motorola has chosen to power with MediaTek. And listen, a full year later, I can see why. The combination of the chip with more than enough RAM and storage, along with the latest forms of connectivity, proved to be very reliable. Thanks to MediaTek for sponsoring this video. But listen, fine. This is obviously not a love letter. I can't say there's anything I didn't really like about this phone, but there are a few things that had me a bit mixed. The first is actually the software, but not for the usual things people complain about. If anything, I'd say Motorola does one of the best jobs at giving you a pretty clean version of Android mixed with a good deal of pleasant extras that make a lot of common sense. I will praise the company's widgets any day as some of the most useful and elegant, and this dates back to at least a decade. I will continue to appreciate the wrist gesture to call on the camera and the chop gesture to activate the flashlight. I also like that whatever approach to AI that we got was not so in your face, almost behaving like a Pixel. You could transcribe audio recordings from the application, call on Gemini from the power key, and since there's no duplicate apps, you could just use Google Photos for object removal, again, like a Pixel. My problem is that as opposed to Google's approach, this phone remains on Android 14. It was my biggest concern walking into this review last year given how the previous model remains stuck on Android 13. Security patches have flowed at a good cadence, but any of you excited about the latest version of Android should definitely not consider this phone. The second is my experience with the cameras, but again, not for the usual things. I remember walking into this review worried that the optics weren't really anything to celebrate, only to walk out of it surprised. My problem with the experience is really the user interface, because this is the one moment where you'll notice that the phone either lags or skips animations completely in a very odd way. I even noticed that the viewfinder does a very poor job at helping you grasp the kind of photo you're gonna get, because once you snap the shot and the processing kicks in, these photos are like 10 times better than expected. One of the reasons I picked this phone over the RAZR Plus is because it brings the trifecta of the ultra-wide, the primary, and the 2x digital crop, where the more expensive brother lacks the ultra-wide. I tested both cameras side by side enough to notice that there's really no difference in the results that I care about. Regardless of the focal length, I'd even say that I like these photos more than what I got from the Galaxy Z Flip 6, and that's on a flagship chip. Maybe low light could have been better at dynamic range, because yeah, a lot of the results seemed overdone in the highlights, but there's really so much that these sensors can do in the conditions that I tested them in. The selfies and portraits were also a case of better than average results, and with the added benefit that you can easily just close the lid and take them from the primary cameras. And then the 4K video proved to be pretty good, though for an Android phone. Stabilization was well tuned and very little warping, and with decent enough dynamic range in harsh scenarios. I'd even say this phone does a better job than far more expensive phones at selfie video. I'm not saying these results will play well with social media, but yeah, you can just prop this phone on a surface and take advantage of its form factor if that's what you want. To conclude, let me just say that 1 year later, this base Moto RAZR has not just restored my faith in foldables, but also in Motorola. Guys, listen, I grew up with this company. From the StarTAC 7860 to the V60 to the V635 to the RAZR V3. I remember the days when that Hello Moto chime was an indication of a status symbol. Over the years, I've seen the company put Android on the map with its Droid campaign, I've seen it fumble its way into Google, and I've seen its rebirth now as part of Lenovo. During that time, I will admit I have been wanting this phone for at least a decade. A device that's legacy Motorola cool, with a well-balanced execution and a price tag that reminds you what this company stood for once. Whether it was for status or for choice, there was a time when there was a flip phone for everyone, and this is just that. How it started? Great. How it's going? A lot better than expected. About the only thing we need now is for a better approach to the software updates. The hardware is durable, the camera experiences are there, like seriously, buy this phone if you find a good discount at this point, or hey, grab one of the new ones coming soon, as this is a clear indication that Motorola is back and for real this time. Let me know if you agree with my assessment in the comments below, and while you're at it, like, subscribe, and also join the conversation, as I'm sure you've noticed that I try to respond to as many comments as I can. Your feedback is like morning coffee. I've needed to grow this little channel into a company now 7 people strong. We all really hope you like what you see. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.